I've now done a little bit more work on the fitting of the hands. The hands are now on. I haven't glued these onto the arbors yet, and I haven't fixed this on properly yet either. So everything's just running by friction fit, but it just show you it does turn and everything mates correctly. Put that back, make sure everything's fastened down properly. Right, what I can do is I can show you the way the calendar wheel fits in, and that's in its correct position. Now I've checked to see, can I make the dial plate up and fit that. These have dropped down just a little bit because I've not got them in their really tight final position, but I discovered these need to be propped up slightly, so just put some there's clearance underneath the hour hand, and the minute hand's well clear. So I've got room to have a dial plate which is propped off on spacers 4mm or so thick, that to leave me a clearance underneath the calendar ring. It's all very tight, but it is doable, and I've checked that this will fit into the case and that this would just be short of the glass. So that was a bit of a relief that everything there fits and fits together well. I've shaped off these, and I did find a photograph that shows that these were shaped something similar to that, and the same on that side. And I'll just show you how the hands work, fit. This will be glued onto the top collet here. So that collet will glue onto the top of there, but I can only do that when I've got that into the correct position at 12 o'clock for both hands. So there's 5mm of recess in there, so that should be fine. I've got a standard square fitting underneath the hand. That's a nice snug fit, but it does need to be held down, so I shall drill 2 tiny 10BA screws to fit into there, and make sure that the heads fitted are well underneath the distance between there and where the minute hand will go. So that's there. I'll take this one out. This is as it was when you last saw it. It's the same arbor, and all I've done is I've glued on to the top a piece of brass that's that long, between there and there, and there's a ferrule inside here, so there's a bit of brass that goes down, that's glued with epoxy into this shaft, into this arbor, and there's a square on the top of it which I've milled, and the hand fits again snugly onto there. Now the hands are laser cut hands which I bought off eBay. I didn't cut them out myself. They're a bit of a long, laborious job to cut out by hand, and these are quite nice hands for commercially available ones. They're a little bit rusty now, they need a good polish and then bluing up, and I'll show that process a little later on, but they need a good clean. They need the edges polishing. They're just, as they came off the laser cutter, and you can see they're laser cut from the colouring of the blue on here in places where it's heated up when they've taken them off. Now my next job will be to make the lead weights to counterbalance the weight of the wheels. So I've got a lead weight to go in this one, and I've got a lead weight to go in this one, and I could probably just put a temporary shaft in here. In fact, I could do it this way, that's the easiest way, but I know that from when I did this before that will fall down under the weight of this hand, so I need to weight the wheel on the opposite side with a lead weight, and I've got some small bits of old sash weight that I had in lead, and I'll cut bits out of here to make a little circular hole and fill that with lead, and I'll show you the process of doing that. I'll probably start with about 1/4 inch, I think, so I'll try a 1/4 inch hole first and see how I get on with that. If it's too heavy and too much lead, then I can face it with wood, or I can replace it with part wood, part lead. So it'd be an interesting project to do. Now I've taken this off and put something in just to wedge that collet, just so you can see how much it falls down under the weight of the hand. Quite significant. I could put blobs of blue tack to balance it out, but I think the weight's going to be so much it'll be more than the blue tack would weigh. So I think I'll drill the hole first and take it from there. I've drilled the wheel and I put a plug of lead in a 6mm hole, and as you can see it's still falling down so that the hand is at the bottom, so it's not enough to counterbalance. So I'll drill this out now with an 8mm hole and try a plug of lead in that. I've now fitted a weight into an 8mm hole. I haven't put it all the way in because I just wanted to check how near it was to being the right weight. Well, it's very slightly heavier with the hand than it is with the weight, but I think I'll probably leave it at that. There's not much in it. If I was to take the weight out, it drops straight down, so it's nearly balanced. It'll be near enough. So I think I'll go ahead and fit that weight into the hole. The lead is quite easily trimmed with a scalpel, so I'm just going to trim that round now and fit it in. As usual with lead, you should avoid handling it too much and wash your hands after you've used it. I've just put the chapter ring on at the top of this just to check to see that the minute hand is the right length of the chapter ring, which it is, and I've checked the hour hand, that too is the right length now, so that's fine. So all I need to do is to put the counterbalance weight in the wheel underneath here, and I think I'll start off at 1/4 inch as I did on the other wheel. On the minute wheel hand I've put 2 6mm diameter lead weights in, and it's still not quite enough, but that's about as much as I can fit in. I really don't want to weaken the wheel anymore, but it's a lot better than it was, so I'm going to go with that. Better than nothing. I've started now doing a little bit of dyeing, and I'll start the polishing. The dye that I've used is Colron Georgian medium oak. That seems to be the right sort of darkness, and these came up really nice. So the colour I started off with was that rather pale colour, and I've ended up like that, and that's a nice even colour. And you can see I've taken all the pins out of this, and I'll now start off with giving it coats of shellac varnish, and probably finish off giving it a rubber of French polish just to give a bit of shine to it. But these wheels do have to have some kind of protection on, if nothing else. We don't want furniture beetle to have a go at them. So the trick that I've done with this was to use a brush in that manner around the edge, and make sure there's no drips and so on left. The one thing is, you have to be careful that there's no little bits hanging down or in the way, so I'm to go around and just check with my scalpel and remove them before polishing. So the next job is to polish them, and I'll come back when I've got that done. Now I've given one coat of shellac to each of the wheels, and of course they don't have a shiny finished look. All that's done is to seal it, and important that all the teeth and the bottoms of the teeth get sealed. And the thing to do is to not worry about it too much, but just let it dry off thoroughly before trying to apply any more polish. It's very tacky, I've only just done it, so I'll resist the temptation and maybe try and leave it 24 hours if I can. Even the boxwood's taken the stain and the polish really quite well, so they're quite difficult to see that they are boxwood, which is good because I don't like that bright yellow look. There's the boxwood. I've now had a look at the dial plate. The dial of the clock is 12, the doorway and the aperture for the dial is 12 inches square, and I've made this a little wider so that it can sit either behind the door, or the door can, or the mask as well can be this side of it or this side. So I haven't decided yet. That'll depend when I get this onto the clock and have a good look at it. But I can screw this down on the outside here without the screws showing, or I could put studs. So I'd probably put, I think I'll probably put pegs in there just to position it, and maybe 4 screws to hold it. This is pretty tough, it's not going to move much, on the underneath here there's 5mm slim down ply, which is exactly the right distance to give me for the hands on the front, and the dial is in the middle here, and there's a band round the outside inside of the door in gold before the gold painted work on the corners for the spandrels. So that's where I'm at now. I'm not trying to rush things too much. The order of work must be that I've got to fill this grain, because this is going to have to be painted firstly in black and then picked out in gold. So I'll fill all the grain and spray it matte black or satin black probably, which will hide all this nice oak work, and then on the back I'll probably just fill that again and spray it black as well, but that obviously won't have anything on it. So that's now my next job, is to fill that and sand it. The Lignum Vitae I used came from a bowling ball, and you can see round here the marks of where I then sliced it up first, and then after that cut it into squares by slicing down here, down there. And I found the best way to cut it, because it's very hard wood, it's difficult grain, is to cut it with a metal electric hacksaw. It cuts very easily with that, and that gets it into this state. But the very first cut is the most difficult, because you've got a round ball which you can't grip with anything. So you can see here I drilled some holes and put some screws in, and then did the first cut with a large saw on my Black & Decker. But anyway, I'm way past that now. This is the very tail end. The next stage is to make the squares into rounds, and you can see those there, and they're approximately 6, 7, 8mm, depends on what I've turned them. It's not all that vital to be any particular size, because they all get turned down to a very small size for the rollers, and I'm concentrating on the rollers first. The larger ones of these would probably do for pivots, so I probably won't use those until I'm ready to do them. Now I've made one so far for this strike side, and that is a whole 1.5mm inside it, so it's basically just a 4mm cylinder with a concentric hole in it. Now that looks very simple, but it's actually very difficult to do, because the grain makes the drill wander off. So you have to have a method of getting the hole drilled so that it is straight through and not at an angle. So the method I use is, this is a blank, no hole at the end of it. I found that the best cutting tool is a nice sharp parting off tool. That works well with the wood. And here you can just see there's a little knob at the end here, just turn that off. There's still a remnants of a hole, which is off centre of course, needless to say. Last thing I want to do is to start the next hole off with it. There we are, that's blank now. I don't want to start the next hole off slightly wandered, so I need at least 12 12.5 millimeters for the largest wheel. So the rollers are 12.5 millimeters I've decided on here, so that the flanges for the pinions are a little bit wider than that, but they don't go down as far as that. And the first lot of rollers are 4 millimeters, which gives a little bit of room between each of the teeth, and on the pitch circle diameters that are shown in the chart. And again, I've verified that myself. Now I'm making these on a Boxford with 125mm diameter chuck, so it's quite a large chuck. It needn't be anywhere near that size. I could do it on a tiny little chuck if I wanted to, but just shows it can be done with any size of chuck. The first thing to do is to spot drill with a centre drill on the blank. Just want a start of a hole. Right, and now drill a hole in that. And I want that 13 millimeters to be on the safe side. Now I can see that the drill is wobbling around a little bit before I even start drilling. The other thing is the flutes of the drill get blocked up with swarf because it's very, very oily, greasy stuff. And it's all glazed at the tip here where it's been rubbing. That's enough for that. I need a small centre to put in here, and that's the smallest live centre I've got, and it just needs to press into the end when you're turning. So the first thing to do is to turn the outside of this down a little bit, bearing in mind that this hole will be wandering off. I've got the DRO set, so that's actually 7mm in diameter at the moment, and I'm going to end up at 4mm. It turns beautifully, this stuff. Turn this down to about 5mm, because I know that the drill doesn't wander off that much. Well, at least I hope not. Now, I found the best way to part it off is just holding a saw blade, hacksaw blade at the appropriate distance. So that's 5mm with the hole drilled the right size in the middle of it, but wandering off. So it's reasonably accurate at one end and completely off at the other end. I'll just check that the hole goes right the way through. Yes, it does. So you can see that that is off centre at that end, and reasonably on centre at this end. So if I turn this round and just engage about a 1/16 of a millimetre, something like that, at that end, and then move the centre up, can't press too hard against it because you'll split it, and you don't want to hold it too hard in the chuck because that will then force it off centre again. So if I just check, make sure that that's tightened up. Yeah, you can see that that's wobbling, and the thing to do now is just to true up one end of it like this. Trued up that end, and it's not completely true, but it's a lot better than it was, and you can see now that that's getting somewhere near. So if I put this in, reverse it round, again not hold more than about 1/8 of an inch. This will probably still wobble around a little bit, which it does. And I can get rid of that by just truing it up now. And if I turn that around a final time, that end is pretty near smack in the middle, and this one's just a little bit off, so we'll turn that around. A bit time consuming to do, but I don't think there's any other way. And that's the finished one. 12.7, I've made it millimetres long, 4 millimetres diameter with a hole. I found a slightly quicker way of doing this. I managed to get a centre drill which has got a pilot on it which is just under 1.5 millimetres. So rather than just putting a centre mark for where I want to drill, I actually drill the full depth up to where the larger diameter is, and that then guides the drill in a lot better. So I'll just run this down very quickly and show you how I can do, I will say, a 3 millimetre diameter. That's 7 millimetres now. Run it to 5 first. That's 5 millimetres. Run the centre drill in. And I'll run it in 10 millimetres. take this down to 3 millimeters. That's 4 millimeters. I'll do it in steps when I get down this low, save it deflecting. Down to 3.1 millimeters. Just check the length. I drilled in 10 millimeters, so I'm going to cut this off. It's a little bit further out. That cut off. Pop that back in, and we'll just clean up the end, and you can see where the drills come through. That's pretty near in the middle. I haven't managed to get it any closer to the camera so you can see it. And then focus. That's one end of it. And that's the end that the centre drill drilled, so that's nice and centric. And there are a group of the rollers made up. That's 6 for one of the small ones. That's another 6. That's 6 in there for one of the small ones, 6 in there for one of the small pinions. That's 8. And that's 10. And there's a larger diameter, as you can see. And these fat ones are for the strike train. There are rollers involved in that. So those are all done. That didn't take very long.